health is not about your kid feeling good. It is about having feelings that fit what's going on and managing those feelings well. There's only 4 kinds of unhealthy coping. Like, there's a whole universe of healthy coping, right? Unhealthy coping is taking your feelings out on other people, taking your feelings out on yourself, turning to substances for relief, or using avoidance to manage anxiety. That's it, right? If you stay away from those 4 things, you can rock on with whatever else is working for you.
We already know what helps. Connection is the cure. It's our deep and meaningful relationships that give us hope and healing. Welcome to This Helps. I'm Marlon Morgan. Join us as we practice authentic and vulnerable conversations that inspire us to go deeper with the people in our own lives. Dr. Lisa Damour, would you say she knows more than anyone else about parenting?
You know what? I would, in fact, say that. I would say that. That's something I would say for sure.
Okay. Yeah. You think our listeners are going to allow me to say it?
I think they're loving it. I think we're back. I think this is welcome back to season 3.
Yeah.
And I think kicking off, I hope we've got some new listeners and they've learned the most important thing, which really this is mostly a podcast about wordplay.
Yeah. Do you think they would do this kind of thing on Damour Povich?
Marlon Morgan?
Did they just shut it off? Did they just shut
In the case
I can't stop.
Of This Helps podcast, you are the host.
Okay. Marlon Morgan. That's me.
It's good.
People hate this.
No,
but
they're loving it. They're having a great time.
Stay for a minute because it gets way smarter. Dr. Lisa Damour, she reads all of the peer-reviewed journals. She gets all of the research, and then she writes a book that makes it all actually usable.
She does all the hard work. She does what everybody wants ChatGPT to do, except It's got personality and brain and heart. And
she really consulted one heck of a movie when it comes to Pixar's Inside Out 2. She also did that.
I think that's all you need to know.
She doesn't have one best-selling book in this area. She has 3. The one that we talked most about was her most recent bestseller, which is The Emotional Lives of Teenagers. It's been translated into 23 languages.
No big deal.
And she also has an incredible podcast called Ask Lisa. A lot of the questions that parents have asked me over the years, whether it's as a school counselor, as a therapist, with a private practice, those are the questions that I asked her on this episode. And I think it's going to be relevant because I know people have these questions. I would say the questions she answers better than anyone is when to worry. She brings up phones, sleep, how to create boundaries around technology, what's actually realistic versus what's like too much even, making more of a thing than it is, which was helpful for me because I love to make things more of a thing than they are. My brain does that automatically.
She's really practiced it, knowing just how much of a thing any one thing should be. Oh, I thought of one other place, if you want to learn more about Lisa, Dr. Damour, that you can do that. Do you know?
You know what? No, tell us.
The Wellness Together conference this year.
Wait, she's going to be in person in San Diego, just absolutely hanging out?
Yes, live and direct, large and in charge.
All right. Enjoy. Dr. Lisa Damour, welcome to This Helps.
Thank you for having me. I'm really glad to be here.
This is a big moment. I don't know. I don't want to look. We've had a lot of great guests, and I'm already doing the politician's look. So this is look. I feel, and it does make me look. We've already had a great guest. I don't know that we've had a guest that has met me personally exactly where I'm at, having a 12-year-old and not knowing what I'm doing. And I'm going to try to be careful because anytime I have a great therapist, psychologist on, there is always a little bit of this helps, not with Marlon Morgan, but this actually helps me. So that might also come up. So let me know if you are okay.
If it helps you, it'll help other people.
Oh, well, yes. And you just right away, people have already heard your voice. How often do you get comments about having the perfect voice for what you do?
I get them actually pretty often, and I think it would be so funny to do like a bit of like a clinician who has terrific advice, but the most grating voice possible. Like, I think I have always thought like that is like a bit waiting to happen.
Oh,
like,
that's good.
Genius advice, but like unlistenable because of how they sound.
That is amazing. I'm already trying to think of like a character from pop culture that could, have the best voice, but absolutely not get anywhere in their career because of their voice. Is there anyone we can think of without starting off, bashing?
Do you remember old friends Janice, the girlfriend Janice
in Friends?
Yeah, in Friends.
But I don't
like. I mean, she just had that was sort of her character was, this really nasal, high pitched.
Whose girlfriend was she?
She was Chandler's girlfriend. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So maybe Janice could do the bit.
Yeah, that's a great one. Janice, Andrea, do you have anyone? Andrea has a lot of good pop culture references.
Well, my first thought, and Lisa, I'm not sure how good your impression of Gilbert Gottfried would be, but he was my first thought.
Exactly.
Could not.
Yeah, you can't do it.
Listen to.
I don't think anyone's going to beat Iago from Disney's Aladdin.
But if they were, and then they were dropping gems, and you're like, I really want to listen, but I can't do it. Right? It would be so funny. I think.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and do a horrible Gilbert Gottfried.
Do it.
But the only thing I can remember him saying was when he used to host like scary movies on USA. Does anyone remember that? Like on cable, it was like he'd come in and he'd be like, USA's up all night, and like it was like what? It almost was like a Lewis Black, but I don't know.
It was a little Lewis Black, but
yeah, thank you. It's always better when the impressions are bad, I think. So
either you got to hit them straight on, or you've got to totally be way off the mark.
That's excellent. So what I'll try to do is, if I have any good advice, or Lisa, if you feel free, anytime during the episode, if you want to surprise us with your best Gilbert Gottfried or Janice, then
I could probably do Janice better.
Yeah, great. I'll be waiting.
Okay.
So we talked briefly before we really get into it and do what everyone else wants, and that is hear from you about psychology and parenting and the work that you've done with absolutely life-changing movies. Two of our family's favorite movies are the Inside Out movies, and I know on Inside Out 2, which I took Oliver, my 12-year-old, to see in the theater. Absolutely loved it. It is probably the thing that we both go back to, like, because it's easier to talk about Riley than it is about Oliver, and I think it only helps and adds to it that it's a girl, because it's like, well, it's like, but it's honestly, there are very few differences between what he's going through. You really, I think, helped nail that. Can you just talk to us a little bit about what that was like to help Riley demonstrate so accurately what that age is about?
Yeah. So, I mean, this was sort of a, dream come true, unexpected twist in my career. So in May of 2020, I got a call that Pixar wanted to talk to me, that they were working on the sequel to Inside Out 1, which wasn't called that, just Inside Out, which I loved, and that they wanted to talk to me. And so I got on a Zoom, because it was May of 2020, so everything was locked down. And it was with Kelsey Mann, the director, and Meg LaFave, the main writer. And they were holding my book Untangled and my book Under Pressure. So my book about adolescent development in girls and my book about stress and anxiety in girls, right? So like,
real quick, what was that like? They get on the Zoom and they're like,
hi.
I think we're talking to the right person. This.
It meant the world. And actually, Kelsey was so lovely. I can't believe I got to do this, but I also got to go to the Hollywood premiere when the movie came out. And then we were hanging out after. And he was so kind. He said, when people learned that we were working on this, they kept giving us all of these, research articles and various papers and books. He said, and, they're just like, they weren't it. And he said, and then we found your work. And then we were like, hey, here's the storyteller we're looking for, and that was so kind. And My job as a clinician is to make things sticky, to share things in a way that they're going to be accessible and memorable. And, people remember things through stories, right? Story is actually what holds narrative in our mind. It is a narrative, right? So we got going and started a 4-year conversation that involved getting to go out to Pixar a few times, which is the most fun thing in the world.
Out in Emeryville? Is that where they are?
It's in Emeryville. Yep,
okay.
in Emeryville, California.
Yeah.
And I also got to help with the evolution of anxiety, the character. In the early iterations in our first conversation, she was a much nastier character, sort of in terms of how she was drawn, in terms of how she was conceptualized.
Mm-hmm.
And they landed, and I will say, I helped. I got to give input. I got to look at drafts and give some feedback, along with Dacher Keltner, who is at UC Berkeley, who was the psychologist on the first one. He and I worked together on the second one, and he's the best. They are geniuses. Like I want to make sure that the credit for this film goes where it belongs, which is the brilliance of the folks at Pixar. But they landed in the end on I think just the most perfect depiction of anxiety, because she's adorable and annoying, right? And that is what my work has tried to bring across, is that anxiety has a place in our lives. It is a useful, protective, natural emotion that occasionally spins out of control, and that's what happens in the film, right? And that's how she's depicted in the film. So it was just, just sort of this remarkable experience. And, Marlon, to your point, there's so much brilliance in the film in terms of then the conversations it opens up at home. And there's two, there's a billion ways that this is true. There's two main ways that I think of. One is they take emotions, they're abstract. They are hard to talk about. Mm-hmm. And they make them color-coded, highly memorable characters. Mm-hmm. So suddenly you can actually now have a conversation with a 5-year-old about envy, right? Because Pixar made that possible. And then the other thing they do, and this is actually drawing on old research we have from shows like Sesame Street, if you make children's entertainment, and I'm using finger quotes, also appealing to adults, right? If you make it so that the adult wants to go to, and of course Pixar's brilliant at this, and there's so much through the film that's just so much fun for the adults, and jokes that are for the adults, stuff that is really meant for the caregiver or parent who's with that child. It actually supercharges the educational value of the content, because where it really goes down is in subsequent conversations. Mm-hmm. And so the adult has to have seen the film. And so I'm 55, so I grew up on Sesame Street, right? So that my folks wanted to the best, right? That my folks were what would the count say, right? Yeah. Now we're doing numbers in my kitchen because my parents thought Sesame Street was funny, because they did a great job of making it engaging to the adults. Mm-hmm. So that you wanted to take your boy to go see this film is a huge part of how films like this become truly useful in helping kids talk and think about emotion in ways that are shared and communicated, and then grounds for empathy and grounds for understanding. There's so much good happening there.
Depersonalizing and making the feelings more objective, and to be able to talk about them is, that's a huge part of, I think, when I had a private practice, I did a lot of acceptance and commitment therapy. And so a lot of what we did was walk through the emotions together, but look at them as if they were not necessarily us. They're just part of our experience. And then we can talk about them and see them, kind of step back and look at all from all angles. Is there a better way to do that than personifying the emotions?
No, and then making them a little touch of humor, right, around all of them, right? So, and it's funny, Marlon, as you're talking, I had this phenomenal supervisor when I was in my postdoc, Carrie Kelly Novick was her name. And I remember her saying to me, she's like, we have the strangest of all jobs, right? Because part of what we want to get people to do is to take their feelings so seriously, to really get to know them and understand them and find language for them and share them. And then we get to a point where we say, and it's just a feeling. It's just a feeling, right? And in some ways, draining it of, unhelpful force. And I think, like the character of embarrassment, right? I mean, it's just like, you can't help but kind of like have this like smile when you
I
think
love
about
that
like
guy.
this character,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or like ennui, which I think was
Yeah.
largely for the adults. Like, I think is like the funniest character. And, I have a daughter who's 15, so she was closer to 13 when the film came out. She's like, Mom, her socks are not all the way on. And it's true. Like, one of her socks.
I didn't notice that.
I didn't notice it either. And
She
that's
doesn't
also
care.
Pixar.
She doesn't care
She's
enough.
like, why
Yeah.
should I be bothered to pull my socks all the way on? Right. I mean, like, but to reward the viewer with that kind of detail, that really makes repeated viewings even.
I felt like it
worthwhile.
was, and as we know, real therapy is increasingly harder to find. It's very expensive, especially as some folks are pushing, artificial intelligence as real therapy and real, like, good, non-hurried, the time to reveal, the safe holding environment, all the things that you can create person to person, ideally in a human, in real time with the other human. Then as that becomes less and less, movies like this, I feel like, go further to democratize or to, it was a whole class. Like, having been through all this, similar, bachelor's in psych, master's in counseling, all these things, it was like, how did they do that? How did they get Psych 101 and then also adolescent psych into this one, 2-hour film?
Yeah, it's amazing. And there's a line that I had nothing to do with. I don't know. I mean, maybe Dacker it came from them. I don't know where it came from. That took my breath away in the film about, just like the incredible clinical wisdom. And it has to do with the scene in the film where the original emotions have been like thrown to the back of the mind and they're like trying to get back to the front. And they're wandering around and they come across that pillow fort and they go in, right? And anxiety is in there. And she has all these mind workers and she's having them project worst case scenarios up onto the screen, right?
Yes.
And then it cuts to Riley in the real life and she's like tossing and turning and sweating, can't sleep. And it cuts back to, inside the mind. And it's actually discussed who has the line. And she goes, oh no. She says, anxiety is using Riley's imagination against her. And I was like, I have never in all my training had somebody offer a better, more concise and more accurate description of irrational anxiety than that. And I have incorporated it into my clinical work because the potential, the therapeutic potential of that line, because you're using your imagination against you, right? So it's kind, but it also is it's your imagination. You can do other things with it. I mean, but it's also so compact. I mean, it's just genius.
Now, it did give me chills, even as you just reminded us of it. And to be in a pillow fort where it's everything about anxiety, the character is just goes so far helping us understand beyond what I think we normally would, which is get rid of it. Give me something for my anxiety. And, to not acknowledge that it is and can be and has been for thousands of years helpful to keep us alive. That is just a huge, the juxtaposition of pillow fort and then some kind of evil operation, inside there. It's just that's where the whole movie stays and the tension is there. And it just makes you want to learn it with the story. So
it's true. Yeah. And there's one more example, so much of this I only picked up upon rewatching, but to your point about that it gives examples of the ways in which anxiety is important. Very early in the film, and this all goes down in about 10 seconds. It's so efficient. There's the scene in real life or in the outside world where Riley and her friends are in the locker room and they're cutting up and taking selfies with their phone and being goofy. And the coach comes in and is like, knock it off. Okay, so then it cuts to headquarters. And in headquarters, Joy is at the controls having a blast. And anxiety is actually tugging on her sleeve. Anxiety has clocked the fact that the coach is angry and is trying to get Joy to reel it in. And Joy shakes her off. And then it cuts back to Riley's life, and the coach is now angry and takes everybody's phones.
Right.
And it's like, it's so quick, but I was like, they nailed it, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you should be anxious if you are goofing around and the coach is starting to get mad. That's exactly what anxiety is for.
Right. And if you ignore it, this is what could
You're
happen.
going to get busted. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
so it was so, I mean, they just, I think it's a masterclass, what they ended up creating.
Man. Well, I want to transition so that we don't miss the opportunity to talk about your most recent book. Tell us about the evolution of writing 2 books that, were primarily for girls, I would say, and for people to help, who parent and care for them and help them through things. And then you write this 3rd book that's sort of for all adolescents. Walk us through that.
So the first 2 books, I mean, my practice has largely been girls. And I think that's common. That usually female clinicians are seeing teenage girls or adolescent girls. And then, male clinicians, we tend to refer boys. And so my sort of deepest bench, was in caring for girls. Though I will say, ever since Untangled and Under Pressure published, parents have been like, 80% applied to my son, which I'm not surprised. I think 80% applies to all teenagers. And certainly the model of development in adolescence that I put out in Untangled is a general model. I had all along, so I started writing the adolescence column for the New York Times in 2015, maybe 2015.
Okay.
And so for 5 years, I wrote the monthly adolescence column for the Times. And my stuff there was all adolescent. It was not girl focused. It was sort of generic to teenagers. And then the pandemic hit, and it just hammered teenagers. And I was doing so much clinical work virtually, presenting to schools, presenting to organizations, presenting to corporations. Suddenly, corporations were like, help people with their teenagers. That I think it was the pandemic that really sort of was like, teenagers everywhere, right? And I was ready to do it, and then this came along. I was, like many clinicians and many people, really working enormously hard through the pandemic to try to help and think about things. And my agent, who I love, was like, you should write a book. And I was like, I'm not going to write a book. I don't have time to write a book. And she's like, well, if you would write a book.
Yeah.
And I'm like, she's like, if you would. I was like, well, if I would write a book, the book I would write. And I basically spitballed The Emotional Lives of Teenagers, which was, everybody needs to stop telling these kids they're supposed to feel good. This is awful. This is truly awful. And these kids being wildly stressed out, wildly freaked out, incredibly anxious, they are having the right reaction. And we need to help them first by just acknowledging that, because the last thing these kids need is to think, what's wrong with me that I'm so anxious in the face of a global pandemic?
Yeah. The news seems fine. Nobody's stressed out. My parents aren't in my room with that. We were in transition at that point. And so we were in a 2-bedroom apartment. We were waiting to move into a different house. And we thought we'd only be in there for a few months. I had to set up my desk in half of Oliver's apartment bedroom. And so, of course he's going to feel stressed out. That was, and he had to do his homework in the kitchen.
He wasn't seeing his friends, and he wasn't going to, it was horrible.
Yeah.
And so, so that's where The Emotional Lives of Teenagers came from. But of course, the goal was to write something that has enduring value. And so, so the book is basically, hey, mental health is not about your kid feeling good. It is about having feelings that fit what's going on and managing those feelings well. But you don't need to worry if your kid has a terrible day, comes home and starts crying and then wants to cuddle the dog on the floor, right? That is, they're supposed to be upset if it's a terrible day. Crying is actually incredibly adaptive, and cuddling the dog on the floor is also incredibly adaptive. If it brings relief and does no harm, your kid doesn't even have to tell you what's wrong, right? If they feel better having done those things, your kid's in great shape.
Right.
Is that still appropriate coping at 40? Just
yes. Yes.
We're curious about that.
Asking for a friend.
Asking for 2 friends.
Hello. Yeah. Hello. I see your lovely puppy. Yes, it is. No, appropriate coping is it brings relief and does no harm. Right? So it could be like, I binge watch my show I love. I go for a walk in nature. The list is hugely long. It's just a little different for teenagers than adults, because teenagers will, for them, music is number one. I did a survey on this. It's playlist city, and that's fantastic. The the thing that I've gotten more clarity on, it's always so interesting to like write a book and then it's out. And then, of course, it's not like your thinking stops.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Sort of the foundation for what your ideas were, and you get them all out there, and then more stuff happens.
Yeah. And so one thing that's become very clear to me since the publication of that book actually, it's almost 3 years ago now. It is 3 years ago now. There's only 4 kinds of unhealthy coping. Like there's a whole universe of healthy coping, right? Like I even had a kid one time say to me, when I'm upset, I get a piece of paper and I rip it into a whole bunch of pieces and I tape it back together like a puzzle. Fabulous, right? Unhealthy coping is taking your feelings out on other people, taking your feelings out on yourself, turning to substances for relief, or using avoidance to manage anxiety. That's it, right? If you stay away from those 4 things, you can rock on with whatever else is working for you.
Yeah. And then the last 2, can be interchangeable. I think, we're avoiding reality when we're altering it.
Yeah.
On those substances. That's great. I feel like that would have fit perfectly in this book. And so the book that I just read, because I wanted to talk with you about it, is The Emotional Lives of Teenagers. And the byline's good too: Raising Connected, Capable, and Compassionate Adolescents, which I don't think compassion is the first thing we think of with our teenagers. Why is that?
Because it could be a little rough at home, I think sometimes.
I think he's compassionate to other people and just not me.
Yeah, no, I think teenagers, it's so interesting to me. I know teenagers can be mean. I'm not naive about that. And I know they can do things that I think they often quickly regret. I'm not going to whitewash adolescents. I have always, I got to consult to a school for a long time and I've spent a lot of time in schools. I have overwhelmingly, when I've seen a kid who's vulnerable, right, there'll be a kid in the class who's vulnerable, like that there's something about them that makes them a potential target for mistreatment. Overwhelmingly, I watch teenagers be protective of those kids, go out of their way to shield them or include them. I think, that doesn't get a lot of headlines. What gets headlines
I don't think it sells ads to say how nice one kid was to the other. So
yeah. And so I think,
unfortunately,
it's like kind of the darker stuff that travels. And so, when teenagers are yucky or when they go after a kid who's vulnerable, right, we hear about it and we should. That's important. But that's not, I think, doesn't accurately represent what's actually happening. Right. There's a much quieter, much kinder, much more decent kind of. And the other thing, so my husband's a high school teacher, and
what subject?
He teaches Latin and Greek. He has a PhD in classics. We met in grad school.
Okay.
So
it's not just any. I mean, shout out to all teachers, but yeah,
he's a smart guy.
Okay. God asked.
And before we had kids, he was one of the baseball coaches at a boys' school. And of course, we had like $0. We were like, fresh out of grad school. So we were like old and had no money of any kind because we've been in training forever.
Very familiar.
Exactly. And so we were invited to go on the spring break trip with the baseball team. We were like, oh my God, someone's taking us somewhere, which like largely involved like being driven around in a van in Florida with like a bunch of adolescent boys, which like, not everybody would enjoy, but like, of course I did, right? Because we were just sitting there listening to the chatter of these adolescent boys for hours and hours. And I will tell you, I was blown away by the patience of the kids with classmates who I think adults really would have much less patience with, right? I mean, like let me put it this way. Actually, Michael Thompson puts it this way, and I think this is perfect, right? Michael Thompson's like, one day he followed a kid through the entire school day, right? Just shadowed the kid through the day. And he was like, and here I am in the last period trying to do everything not to poke myself in my eye with my pencil, right? I mean, teenagers, kids, like they go all day with all these characters around them who are probably rubbing them the wrong way. Adults they don't even like, that they're being really, really good to and behaving well. I think we don't credit them Because, and I think a lot of it's because we don't see it at home, right? I always say
Yeah.
like school gets the best of them, we get the rest of them, right? So like at
It's
school,
good.
they're
That's
amazing.
good. I feel like
Yeah.
that's true with adults who have stressful jobs as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You kind of get home and everyone's sort of trying to alleviate all the stress from the day and putting up with all that stuff. But that's one of the things that I've noticed anytime I've either heard you talk or read a book that you wrote, it's you have this, what seems like a genuine curiosity and love for adolescents and for this age group. And you're also pretty honest about kind of the times where you haven't done the ideal thing in your house. And so I think people relate to that. Also, there's power in that vulnerability. So I think, but what, that really normalized and validated my experience as a parent and made it feel like so many of the things that I was like, okay, do I worry about this? And I could say in the past, I used to do more going to schools, and that was always the one question that you knew you were going to get if you went in and tried to explain, okay, here's what to look out for with clinical depression, or here's what it might look like. Here's some signs, and even the very difficult subject, probably most challenging subject, is how do you kind of talk about suicide? And if someone's that low, the hardest question that I think you do a great job answering is when to worry and when not to worry. And I feel like you do it all throughout this book. And by starting off framing sort of the big emotions that most adolescents experience as a feature, not a bug, and you describe emotions as data. But can you go into that a little bit for folks who might be like, what do you mean? I thought they were just messed up for 10 years and then they're going to be cool again.
Well, so I've been thinking about, like, I do adore teenagers, right? And you're right. And I love them. And I also know that teenagers can smell at 1,000 yards adults who do and don't like teenagers. Like, they are highly aware. And I think largely it's because we tend to talk pretty bad about them, adults as a group, right? We say things like, it's amazing to me. Like, people be like, oh, teenagers, right? Like, you cannot do that about any other. Like, if you were like, women, right? Like, that's like completely unacceptable, right?
Yeah.
But like with teenagers is no problem, right? I'm like, are you kidding me? So teenagers, I think, as a function of being, on the receiving end of a negative stereotype, like, they are hyper aware of who's bringing it and who thinks they're like at the most interesting juncture of development in the history of anything and like so fascinating and funny.
And they're
So
looking to be accepted at any moment and
they're
connected.
looking to be taken seriously. Like, I mean, and we don't. And so if you take them seriously, they will give you the world. I mean, like, I will tell you, I got way too much credit for stuff I wrote in the Times where I had like all these insights. Okay, how I had all these insights, I would find myself a pack of juniors. I'd be like, explain this to me. And they'd be like, well, you seem to really want to know. So they would lay it out and then I would write it out.
Right in the top. Great.
And then this teenager said that and this teenager said that. And like, it was amazing. So when I was actually the when to worry, I started with that with Untangled. So Untangled has 7 chapters, each about what I consider to be like a key developmental transition in adolescence. And they go, it's funny, when I was writing the book, my editor was like, are these happening in an order or are they happening all at once? And I was like, yes.
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 Yeah,
Yes to both.
sometimes.
So it's parting with childhood, joining a new pack, harnessing emotions, contending with adult authority, planning for the future, entering the romantic world, and caring for themselves, right? Like those are the jobs of an adolescent, like of a successful adolescent in terms of managing the developmental stage well. And I was working on the book, and it was sort of midway through working on it that I struck upon the when to worry structure, because for each chapter, I'm like, okay, so your kid's going to do this spicy thing and your kid's going to do this thing that is like confounding. And like, here's what's going on. And then at the end, I was like, here's when you need to worry. So there's like literally a when to worry section at the end of every chapter. So your kid can be moody as all day long, but you need to worry if ba-boom, 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 ba-boom. I think it's a very freeing way to talk about teenagers because so much of what they do in the day-to-day is worrisome or is confounding or feels like an overreaction. And it's not an overreaction. It's what they're really feeling, but it strikes adults as excessive. And so having, it's funny, I actually think strangely, when you articulate when to worry, everybody relaxes. It's such a funny kind of like paradox.
It's putting it in the room, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe not being so alone with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
The-
And you're like, there's the line. If you're not over it, the rest is the, wonderful, normal, spicy business of teenagers.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if I'm going to do this justice, but there was a part in the emotional lives of teenagers that you brought up a research study, and it kind of made me think of, and I know you just recently talked to Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris and had her on. It was a great show. She talks all about the adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, that affect, this age group specifically. I mean, they experience them all throughout childhood, but I think developmentally you see a lot of the effects throughout life. But you mentioned this study about stress hormones, and it says that the amount is 6 times greater than those who had not endured maltreatment when they're sort of doing a planned stressful test, kind of without going into the whole, method of how they got the information. But I think that really stuck with me because not only, asking for a friend, but I have my fair share of ACEs, and I'm thinking, does that mean that someone like me, and then a shout out to my wife, she literally has 0 ACEs.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking when we're both experiencing something together, am I 6 times more stressed out than she is?
Maybe. So, it was a great conversation with Dr. Burke-Harris. It was at the Common Sense Media Summit on kids and families. And then I made a podcast episode out of it for my podcast, Ask Lisa. And I think she's so brilliant and I love her. And she was referring, she didn't use the technical terminology, but it's what I use in my book, to the ways in which early traumatic experiences can disrupt the HPA axis, the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. And basically, the job of that set of neurological structures is to release adrenaline under stressed conditions to keep us safe. Again, like, something bad is happening, you need to be on, full alert. But if you keep hammering on that system, the system becomes hypersensitive. And so that's the very technical way of thinking about it. The way I walk up to the question of trauma, and I am not an expert on this, like I know enough, but I really defer to people who have really turned this field into an incredibly rich area, and that's not been my area. But for me, anytime I think about trauma or try to talk about trauma, I always start with the phrase, trauma rewires the nervous system. Because I think that puts us where we belong in terms of understanding everything else after that. So, yes, right? If you have been through trauma, it rewires the nervous system so that you have a very pronounced reaction to future threats. Now, we can rewire the nervous system, right? We have therapeutic ways to do it. And not every traumatic event rewires the nervous system indefinitely, right? Like you can have a bad thing happen, like a car accident. This happens all the time. People have a bad car accident and then they're super uneasy and reactive for a while. And then they drive a lot, nothing bad happens and their nervous system re-regulates. But I think, that's for me always been the most useful way to, the kind of framing for anything having to do with trauma is I start from that position, and it helps me understand so much of what can seem like disparate findings or, kind of hard to understand. You're like, but if we were talking about a rewired nervous system, this is going to make a lot of sense.
It certainly made sense to me. And I had the thought, and this is, after working with students for years and seeing the students who had been through a lot be described by teachers and their coaches as very intense, big emotions, quick to react. I thought, are they just getting way more adrenaline in these other situations than the other kids?
Yeah, I mean, there's threats and there's threats, right? I mean, and it's playing out against experience, and then of course that is merging with the normal vividness of adolescence, right? Mm-hmm. Your wife with 0 ACEs felt things more deeply as a teenager, right? Everybody feels things more deeply as a teenager. And that's true both of the bad things and also of the good things. Like fun things are funner when you're a teenager,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Highs are higher, lows are
lows are
very
lower.
low.
And so then you marry that with somebody who's had a nervous system that has been taxed and strained and maybe has become highly reactive. That's a really scary combination for that kid. And I think that that's the piece. It's easy for adults to get, oriented around like what they're seeing and how it feels for them, right? Like that kid's a disciplinary problem, or that kid's like freaking out for no reason, or whatever we might say. I think the piece that I was so grateful to have come up in my training is it terrifies the child, right? Like the kid who is sitting in class and then someone like slams a door and the kid has this big freak out, right? That same kid is also thinking, what is happening? What is wrong with me? No one else is having this happen.
Right. That's the
How
worst one. It's like,
broken
why didn't
am
that
I?
scare anyone else?
Yeah, how broken am I? Right?
Yeah.
Like that question of like, I think teenagers, do walk around with this question of like, am I okay? Am I normal? Right? And then when you're, managing this dysregulated nervous system on top of a nervous system that's already been through it, that like, I think we lose empathy at times, or we don't think to empathize with the part of the teenager that is also pretty flipped out about what's going on.
Well, there's generational trauma too. So now you have a parent who's easily triggered or activated, I should say. And then, but maybe more doors are slamming in that house simply because of that.
Right. The parents have been through it. The kids are going through it now. Everybody's going through it. I mean, it really actually calls for, the wisdom of thinking about systems, like not just going for the kid, not just treating the kid, like thinking about the family around them, thinking about the caregivers, and caring for the caregivers so that they are better positioned to care for that child.
That is, a good segue, I think, into what you call sort of hot and cold moments or hot and cold thinking. And also that combined with you've also said the renovation, like the brain is like kind of going through a renovation, which of course we all understand because we're all addicted to HGTV. And but how do those fit together? Tell us about how those moments balance out. What should we do when we see a cold moment versus a hot moment?
Mm-hmm. So starting with hot and cold reasoning, which comes from cognitive science. Like I'm not the one who came up with that, but it's such a good way to think. I think it's really important to recognize that there's a lot happening neurologically for teenagers that's unique to that phase of life, that their minds just work a bit differently than kids' minds or little kids' minds or adult minds. Not worse or, worse or better, just differently. And one of the really cool findings is that they have two reasoning systems, and the one they're using depends on who they're with. So, right, whichever is like, oh, okay, I know where this is going.
Yeah.
Right? So cold reasoning is like when they are with adults or when they are alone and when everything's like, kind of boring and nothing's going on, they reason like we do. They reason like adults do. And this research, and Lawrence Steinberg was one of the key researchers on this. It's so smart. I love the methodologies. They put, 16-year-olds who have driver's license in driver simulators, and they have them drive. And they have nobody around them, and they watch how well they drive. They then bring in a bunch of age mates to sit behind them while they drive in the simulator. And they drive so much more recklessly.
Yeah.
But you put a 35-year-old in the driving simulator, they drive exactly the same regardless of who's around, right?
Even if there's tons of other boring 35-year-olds?
Yeah, no, they drive the same. Doesn't change them. Doesn't change them one bit.
Yeah.
And it's this kind of research, and it's actually very fun when policy is so effective. This is the research that changed kids having peers in cars.
Yeah.
And actually, like, not to talk fatalities, but actually dropped the fatality numbers dramatically.
We can talk about it if it drops it. I mean, that's
it
so
drops
amazing.
It, exactly.
Yeah.
And like, you're like, that's amazing. Like, what a cool example of like psychological science translating into like real world impact through policy. And like, you can't have 7 kids in your car when you're 16. Like, you just can't. So if it's like a peer situation or a heightened situation or an excited situation, kids just reason differently. And so what this means it's a little scary for parents and caregivers, because what it means is at 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, your kid might be like, I'm going to Billy's house tonight. And at 5 o'clock, you're like, no drinking. And the kid is like, you got it. And the kid means it. The kid means it. They're like, I know it gets buck wild at Billy's. I'm not going to drink. They mean it. They mean it. They mean it. They get to Billy's. A different brain has gone into effect at Billy's because everybody's there and it's super fun.
So they switch reasoning centers at the 100%. Moment they walk in. They're like,
well, if there's, a kid they got a crush on offers them a beer, now you're in a different situation. So the thing that has to happen, this, no guarantees that this will keep your kid perfectly safe, is that in the kitchen, you need to say, that is fantastic that you have no intentions of drinking at Billy's. Let's imagine you get there and the kid you have a crush on offers you a beer. What's the plan? What's the plan? And under cold conditions, the kid says, why don't I drive? Or why don't I tell them you'll breathalyze me? Or like something. So that when they are on the fly in the hot conditions, they are not starting from nothing in terms of a plan to keep themselves safe.
So you're kind of flagging the minefield a little bit, just kind of preparing them.
Yeah. I used to, when at the school where I consulted, I used to teach about the course about parties and drinking and stuff. Mm-hmm. And it was a girls' school. And I would say, let's play a game. Let's play a game. Smart girl goes to a party. Smart girl leaves in an ambulance because she's so drunk. Mm-hmm. Walk me through how this happened.
So you're making them do it.
I would have their mouths. I think there's a lot of value in their mouth. They're saying it. They're like, well, she does. I'm like, that's one beer. She's not at they aren't calling the ambulance next. How does the second one happen? How does the third one happen? And then we would say I'm like, where's the off ramp? Like how could this have, but I'm like, make it real. Like, let's make this as vivid as absolutely possible. And my goal was, when you get to that party, you are thinking about this conversation, right?
You have that other pathway developed, that other like release or off ramp, like you know how to do it.
You've thought it through, at least in my class.
This is, I know, Lisa, you're saying this is for adolescents, but I really think we all, I don't care what age you are. I think, visualizing success at not ruining your life is great for every situation.
Always a good idea.
How am I going to stay emotionally regulated in this situation? Yeah. And, I feel like I need to do that before I have those big conversations with my kid. For me.
Yeah, it goes back to the line you were talking about from the first Inside Out too, where it's like, she's using her imagination against her, but it's like, well, then you can put it to good use too. Don't let it just.
Yeah.
It's good. Something, I don't remember if you put it this way, and we've talked a lot about connection in this podcast. It's all about how, it's not necessarily screens and social media that's ruining our lives. It's not AI out in a cloud or on a data center somewhere that's making us unhappy. At the root of it, what we know in psychology is that the depth and the breadth of our relationships contributes more than anything else to our ability to enjoy life and get through it. And so everything we do is focused on how can we help our listeners, the ones who are parents, the ones who are, we have some, believe it or not, college age people that are looking to, how they're going to build the foundation for this part of their life. But I can't remember if you used the alliteration or not, but I took it as connection before correction. Does that sound?
I have heard that from others. So I think that's out there. And I think that's right. And I think it's true. Right. I mean, I think, first of all, nobody likes to be corrected. I don't care how old you are. Right. And I think that anytime you have to correct or redirect a young person, it should be about like, hey, I'm on your team. Right. And I'm asking you to make this adjustment in the name of your safety.
But you can't just be like, I'm on your team. Don't do that.
Don't do that. Right? Like, now I'm going to flex my authority.
You got to build it. Like you talk about building it, what it looks like before any of this happens.
True. I will say, though, and I think it's hard to talk about this. It's a little subtle, but I think about it a lot. It's, in fact, around risks, around the stuff we're worried about for kids, that we're handed opportunities to either build connection or to corrode it, right? So, like, take social media, right? Or kids. Like, thing that makes me most bananas is adults who are like, oh, teens in their phones. Like, I'm like,
Are
okay.
they saying it looking up from their phone?
Exactly.
Because that's
Looking
how
up
I
from the
pictured
mobile
it.
phone.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay. There's so much wrong with this. And I, like, I'm 55. I say whatever I want at this point. It's just, I'm going to get myself in trouble. So I will, as soon as I hear that, I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Right.
If we had this technology as adolescents, we would use it exactly as they use it. We just did not have it, right? Like, think about. I
can't imagine. I would find ways to distract myself from those emotions. Yeah, I can't imagine.
Imagine, right? I mean, like, I got so excited about call waiting. Okay, right? So we have to start there. But I also worry that posture of like, oh, teens in their phones. Well, what teen wants to take guidance from an adult who has started the interaction that way, right? Like, you and that damn phone, you need to leave it outside your bedroom, right? Like, there's no way this is going to go well. Whereas if the adult takes that same moment, like the kids taking their phone into their room, which is not my favorite thing. Like, I'm not very prescriptive, but I don't really think it's good for kids to have tech in their bedrooms, especially overnight. Another way to approach that is to say, listen, I know this device is like the coolest thing that was ever made, right? Like, it is. It is extraordinary. And I myself struggle to not have it take up more time in my life and more space in my life than I wish it would. But here's what I also know, and the data are really clear. Your sleep is the best thing you got going in terms of your overall mental health, besides our relationship, basically. Like, your sleep is like the key to mental health. And we have all this data showing that as soon as tech is in bedrooms, sleep starts to go out the window. So I love you. I love you. I do not take my phone in my room out of my own health and safety. If it's like if I got in the car and put on my seatbelt and put on yours. So we're going to have a rule in the name of your health, your safety, your thriving, your ability to focus at school, that we're just not going to have tech in the bedrooms. And it's not about your willpower. It's about this thing being more powerful than anything we've seen. This is about you versus all of Silicon Valley, not a winning fight. Let's charge them in the kitchen, right? So you're still making the rule, but you're like, kiddo, it's you and me versus Silicon Valley, not me versus you.
I think the most powerful thing you said there, Lisa, though, is I don't take my phone in the bedroom. So there's a whole different strategy I try to use about that just for myself and as an example. But it costs more because it involves having a phone that is
a landline.
Yeah. So, but what do you tell parents that are like, well, in case of emergency, I need to call 911. I need to do all that. Like,
okay, so I think there's a couple ways to think about it, because like I have aging parents, and a lot of people have aging parents, and that is, I totally understand that. So there's a couple ways to play that. One is actually we have kept our landline, which does cost more, and the only people who call
weirdly expensive. Why?
It is weirdly expensive. The only people who call it are aging parents and spam callers, right? Like those are the only people who have that number.
Got it.
So that's how we don't take our phones into our room, is that if there's a middle of the night emergency, that phone will start ringing. I was also looking, there's these different, and I'm not sponsored by any of these, there's this tin can, is this, it's like $100. I don't know how much it is, like once you get it, but it's an internet-based pretend landline. The only other problem is the other person has to have a tin can also. Right? Okay. So, yeah, I can imagine an aging parent situation where you're like, this is the phone to call our house, right? Like, and you get a tin can for your folks and you get a tin can for you and you put that in your bedroom, right? Fine.
But that's cool because then spam can't call it probably because they don't have a tin can.
So there's that solution. There's also, and I think, I think a lot of teenagers would understand if you're like, here's how I take my phone into my room at night. It is basically off. It is on do not disturb. I shut everything down, but I do have a do not disturb override for grandma and grandpa. And you understand why. But this thing, otherwise, I do not touch it. It is inert. As the only reason it's coming in my room. And I put it actually super far away so I'm not tempted to play with it. Now, you are not responsible for grandma and grandpa, so your phone charges in the kitchen, right? Like, kids are reasonable, right? Like, you can make those kinds of cases.
And they'll check. The first thing they do when they walk in the room is going to see, like, that morning, they're going to look, okay, how close is her phone to her bed?
Is it truly where you said it was? Is it truly set up? And if you're honest, I mean, they're not hostile to reason, right? I mean, I think people can be cranky with teenagers and assume as much, but that's not true.
But they are hostile to hypocrites, like being a hypocrite. Hypocrisy,
wildly,
I should say.
Highly sensitive to that, right? So if you're straight up, you'll be fine with teenagers.
Yeah, but I feel like the magic in that is going to be convincing people, adults, to be that example. It's so hard to.
It
Yeah.
is, but
They got to play
truly,
mahjong, Lisa. They
they
have
got
to
to do
do it.
something else.
And
I mean, but if we know that adult mental health is so incredibly tied to youth mental health, parent caregiver mental health, and if we know that sleep is the glue that holds human beings together, and if we know, and we know it, that having a phone in a bedroom, it's not a phone, a machine of boundless, alluring
it's like
delights.
a casino in the bedroom.
If we know that undermines sleep, we can make different choices.
Yeah. Yeah. You kind of, I liked how you wrapped up the book. I was reading the Kindle version, and I wasn't paying attention to where I was in the book. And I got sort of slapped in the face by that I thought I had like 20% more book to read, and I was totally into it. And then it was just all of your very careful and extreme amount of research that you cited. So I was like, I guess this is good. Oh, I guess this is good. I did think I had like a couple more hours with this awesome book, but I actually did read a lot of the read a lot of your
Did you find my
citing.
Easter eggs? I put Easter eggs in there. Did you see them?
Yeah, there was a few things that, and then you would say the line from the book and put it back.
Yeah.
Tell us about the Easter eggs real quick, because I might have missed a few.
So this is sort of part of a bigger story. So I was very fortunate. I came out of, very technical academic training. I was pointed towards a university job, and then I decided to do what I do. And I'm really close with the people who trained me. It meant a lot to me to be, I taught at universities for a long time. And I did have this oh my gosh, I'm going down this much more public facing road. I'm going to lose my meaningful connections to the academic environment I came from. And what I found is that's not true. I am looking forward to, I have good close connections with the American Psychological Association. I get to do all sorts of fun stuff with them. But also part of, I think, why I've stayed in good stead, I've stayed in good standing, is I still work and write with the level of, citation that we use in academic writing. And the thing I love about commercial writing is that blind annotation where the reader, it's not like 40 footnotes on a page, because nobody wants that. But it's all in the back. And so everything, you just find the snip of the line, and then you can see the study I'm talking about. But then I use the endnotes, for all this other stuff. So there's one place where I have a long conversation in the endnotes. Marlon, in the chapter on gender, one of the things that I came across, I was like, wait a minute. Right when we see sexual harassment take off, which is 6th to 7th grade, is exactly when the girls are bigger, stronger, faster, and also crushing the boys academically because of this pubertal advantage. They're 2 years ahead. And I'm like, these I think are connected. I think that there's a link here.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of a small boy syndrome.
Exactly, right? So I'm like, somebody has to have shown this. And I scoured the literature, and I had friends who are in that area. I'm like, do you have anything? And none of us could come up with somebody who put this together. So there's an extremely long note about that. I'm like, here's the closest studies. Yeah. If somebody else has said this, I have missed it. It is on me. So I can do the kind of academic disciplined view of it, but then also I'll put in headlines from The Onion that I think are super funny that actually also prove the point.
Yeah,
it's in there. Go back.
Dang it. Okay.
There's a headline from The Onion that I like that underscores a point I was making.
I love that you couldn't find the research, so you went to the best and funniest fake newspaper. Yeah.
It was also research based, but I also was like, okay, then as usual, The Onion has nailed this concept. So, so that's why my books are like that.
But part of that explains a lot of kind of me. I gotten to work with you a couple times, once we were in a group for the ad council, and then just being able to see you talk at some events that we go to. I think that I've never thought of you as straying too far away from the academic crowd or establishment. I always just thought, and maybe this is going to get me in trouble with everyone else, but I always just thought, what would they do without you? How to talk to people, and you are literally taking in. You're like a walking meta-analysis of the research, and then you're you're citing things so people can trust and believe what you're saying, but you're also, and I've also never heard you say anything that you didn't back up with research, and that not just on this show, but just when you're just talking.
Yeah, that's very kind. I think the way I think about what I do, like this, I like love metaphors. So here's what I think about the metaphor I came up. I'm a pearl diver, right? Like, so the pearls are like all of the pearls of wisdom, like from our field, like either clinical experience, right, that lives in clinical texts or research findings, and they're invaluable. But they live at the bottom of the ocean, or and they're in muck, they're in academic jargon, they're stuck in an oyster.
A shell,
yeah, they're deep in. And so my job, and I say this both out of humility, like I'm not inventing anything that isn't already there, right? Like, I mean, it's very rare that I have an idea, like recognizing this coincidence about puberty in 6th grade, like that's a fairly unusual thing. Mostly I'm just translating. But my job is to like find the pearls that I think families are going to find helpful and then surface them, right? And then polish them for retail accessibility, right? Like nobody wants a mucky pearl covered in academic jargon.
Yes. This is great. This is exactly how it feels.
And then my job is to be like, here it is. You can wear it as a necklace. You can put it on your ears. You could give it as a gift, right? Like, so it's not in any way diminished from its original state, but it's retail ready and
accessible.
Yeah.
There's no I would venture to say, not just families, not just teachers and educators, not just parents. I would say the great majority of everyone I just named, they're not, reading the Journal of Nature, or, they're not going through peer-reviewed journals. But honestly, we employ a lot of therapists, and I think they're great, and I, love working with them. But even they are not necessarily going back to the research after grad school. They're just not doing it. So for you to put it in one of the world's most popular movies with incredible reach, or to have, your book, we were just talking the other day, your book pretty much, I don't know if it made it to space, but it was certainly, certainly could have. Can you tell us about that? Because that was,
man,
talk about making something accessible and then seeing it again.
So the lunar mission, Artemis 2, so exciting. And a couple of days before the launch, I got an email from somebody, and they were like, this person was, it was sent through a friend. They were like, a friend who was at Kennedy Space Center for the launch wanted you to have this, or wanted me to send you this email. And they had a display, it may still be up, of all of the crew members, the 4 crew members from Artemis 2, each of them with a video talking about things that were personally important to them, and then a case of objects underneath the, full-length video of the person talking. And in the case of Commander Reed Weissman's objects, is my book Untangled. And it's like I got lucky. He had like 3 or 4 books, and mine's facing out, and you can see the cover right there. Yeah. And it's like big and obvious. And it just, his story is extraordinary. It's awful in many ways. His wife died of cancer several years ago. He's raising 2 teenage daughters alone. But, he's a smart guy. He doesn't want garbage, right? Like, that's how I think about it. Like, you don't have to dumb things down to make them retail ready, right? That's why I like the pearl metaphor. It's like, we're not diminishing this.
It was there. You're just kind of creating a bridge to it, or an access point that people can build on.
But
it's hard.
Use.
Without going, getting too, meta about it. It takes a lot to get to where he did, and so you wonder if one of those moments in his family life, proved too much or too difficult, or kept him from doing the things that he, wanted to do or needed to do in his personal life. You wonder if without resources like the one you created, if he would be there. I mean, I'm not trying to give you credit for him being
credit.
an
That is
astronaut.
very kind. I will not take that credit. But what I think is, it's interesting in the wake of the pandemic, a lot of people are like, what can we do for teenagers? I'm like, take care of their parents, right? Like, if you want to take, like, that's what we do, is that, the most powerful force for adolescent is what you said at the beginning. Youth mental health is strong relationships with caring adults. Okay, well then take care of the adults, equip the adult to care for that child. Like, no more apps for teenagers. Like, I mean, occasionally maybe, like, but like really, really, like the adults around teenagers are where I think the action is. At least for me, that's where I like it.
What can an adult or, a parent who may feel like maybe they have two kids and one's already out of the house and one's not, and they feel
That's
like
me.
they kind of
I have
mess
a kid
things up.
graduating from college and I have a 15-year-old at home.
Well, let's say, you're listening to this and you're hearing it and you're thinking, wow, I kind of missed some of this with the older one. What do I do today? What's something I can do today to change it and make sure?
So I think there's nothing quite as powerful as when a parent or caregiver apologizes to a young person who is owed that apology. And there's actually, and I've written about it, I think it was in Under Pressure, like there's such a thing as a good apology, right? A good apology is, where you name what you did, you take full responsibility for it, you don't make excuses.
6 steps, right?
It's like a 6-step situation. Like it's not an easy thing, right? You don't make it, you can look this up online, like it exists in the outside world. You don't make excuses, you offer to make reparations, you ask for forgiveness, but you don't require it, right? I think there's something so incredibly growth-giving to the relationship when that happens, when an adult does that. And then, of course, whatever you're apologizing for, you can't then turn around and do it again, right? It's not like it like resets the clock, right? Like you have to really show that you've grown and that you're taking very seriously the, regret that you have about what has happened and making use of opportunities to show that you are changing and changed. Kids are forgiving. And I think it's interesting as in Untangled, I wrote about parents having, their own shortcomings from their own childhoods, because we all do, right?
Yes.
And that if we can actually have some insight into that and just share that with kids and say, look, I am irrational in this area because like around money, my family handled money terribly and it's something I'm working on. And you've met, Grandpa, and you've seen the weird stuff he does at Thanksgiving with money. And like, I'm trying to get it right, but I won't always get it right. Yeah. But it's not about you. It's not about you, right? I think as long as we can help young people understand, like, it's not personal that I have this shortcoming. It's not that I'm not trying to be a good parent. It's that this is my own neurotic stuff that gets in the way sometimes, and I'm working on it. Kids are like, okay. I mean, they're kind about it.
There's some self-reflection and humility that, you would need. Side note, that's a whole nother podcast. I want to have you back, and I want to hear all about that Thanksgiving situation if and when you're ready. I think so what I'm hearing you say anyway is that it's going to take a 6-step apology to someone you believe you're over or in authority of. Take some honesty with yourself, some humility, and really some consistency after the fact too, to kind of try to stick to what you did. And the other thing that you mentioned, and I remember reading this in the apology section, it stuck out the most because what's so important about saying the actual words, I'm sorry? Because like you have that in there and it's like, you should do it, right?
You should do it. In truth, I don't know that I know exactly why that's important. I will tell you, my closest friend is a linguist. And so, she and I have had those conversations, and I know from her, right? Like she's really studied this. Like you have to say, look, I am sorry. I am sorry, right? I owe you an apology. I am sorry. I think there's something compact about it. I think there's something direct about it. And it as we talk about it, Marlon, like, I think sometimes we blow past the thing that seems too small when it's in fact the thing, right?
Like probably they could be waiting for those exact words.
I'm sorry. I owe you an apology. I shouldn't have done that.
You didn't do anything to me, but this is making me feel better. I have fake apologies. Right? It's just set up on a loop. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's real value in reparations, but reparations are not easy to make.
Okay. We've gotten to the point where I realize I have a little bit of time left, and there's a few things that I also really loved and I want to hear you talk about.
Okay.
I could not have been more excited to read the section, the heading in the book, why your teen hates how you chew. Because I think we all want to know that. So why does he care? He does. He definitely. He said, you chew really loudly, and I was like, I doesn't everyone? Do you think my mouth sounds different than yours? And maybe it does, but I got defensive. I had to be honest. One of my best friends, he has 2 girls, and they're similar to ages of my boys, and she's the nicest person. And she said, she calls him Padre or Podge. She said, Podge, you chew like a cow. And she did not mean it. She just had learned about cows or seen a cow chewing, and and I looked and I was like, you kind of do. It's like a circular situation. But yeah, why is that so important?
To give it to you straight.
Yeah.
So okay, so you know how so I have 2 daughters, and they're currently 15 and 22. And you get all this training and you know all this stuff about development. And then your kid hits 13 and you're like, okay, the phrase separation individuation, which is the technical term for what we're going through, in no way captures how miserable this experience is, right? And so I started thinking about it, and it was very much in watching this unfold in my own house. And the way I started thinking about this is in terms of brand, right? Kids start to develop a sense of a personal brand. So this is the individuation, right? I'm going to be my own person. And their brand is important to them and they're building it. They also, though, and I think it really does get very spicy around 12 or 13 is when this really starts to take hold in families. They are still so embedded in family life that what you're doing reflects on their brand, right? So you get to this juncture in early adolescence where kids are sort of imagining who they're becoming and what's ahead and the brand they want to build. And anything you do that is unlike that brand is annoying to them because you are, live awfully close. So that way you chew, I don't want to be the kind of person who chews that way, so you have to stop. But also anything that you do that is like that brand is annoying to them because they're trying to develop their own brand. So the form this took with my older daughter was when she was 13. So I have liked Beyonce a long time. And I was in the kitchen and Beyonce was on and I was kind of bopping to Beyonce.
Yeah.
And she had just discovered Beyonce and Beyonce was under her brand as far as she was concerned. Yeah. And she was like, Mom, stop. It was the worst thing I could possibly do.
And I cannot like the same things you like.
Yes,
that is
why are you stepping on my brand, right?
Did she come into it more of the Cowboy Carter phase or
no, that's
in Destiny's
recent.
Child or
I think it was more I can't remember. So that was 9 years ago. So whatever.
Lemonade? That's 9 years ago is right around
Lemonade. Yeah, it's probably Lemonade.
Maybe?
And that belonged to my kid and I was messing with it.
Okay.
So the misery for the parent around this juncture is anything you do that is like how your kid sees themselves becoming is annoying to them.
So it's a lose-lose.
Yeah, anything you do that is unlike how they see themselves becoming is annoying to them. Everything you do is annoying, right?
Did you say I listened to Beyonce before you were born?
I am sure I tried to defend myself, and I'm sure it was the dumbest conversation ever that went absolutely nowhere. And so I think, it's not the most fun moment in parenting, but the cool thing is, usually kids then start to have a consolidated sense of this thing's mine, or they go do separate stuff, or they don't mind. As soon as their identities get a little more crystallized, which usually happens 9th, 10th, 11th grade, they have their own sense of who they are and what they're about. They don't care what you do in the same way.
They're not so worried about it.
In that separation individuation juncture, when they're I want to be separate, but we're awfully merged, it's a little spicy.
I don't have kids, and I don't know that I ever was one. What happens if you say, what's going on here? You're at the separation individuation juncture, and it makes sense that, we're butting heads right now, but just know Beyonce was mine first, and eventually you'll be fine with that. Yeah. Does it not work?
It's interesting. The analog to that, Andrea, is that people say to me, should I have my daughter read Untangled? Right? Because it is sort of here's what's happening. Here's the background activity. And I'm like, you know what? it's hers to do and yours to understand, right? Like,
Yeah,
I think at
totally.
some level, this like they
Right.
get to be in that moment developmentally, and it's just better if you don't take it all so personally. I think that that's really what my work is. Like, this isn't personal. Like, this is very much a universal. Like your friends being told you choose like a cow. Like, like this is not about any one adult. It's about kids needing to sort this stuff out. I do think you can say, like, if they're being jerks, you can be like, hey, that's rude. Like, don't talk to me that way. And the guidance that I share in that book is like, you can say to kids, you got 3 ways you can be with me. You can be friendly. That's awesome. You can be merely polite if that's where you're at, or you can tell me you need some space, but like, you can't just be mean. Like, that's not an acceptable way of interacting.
Yeah, I think it comes down to usually boys. Maybe that's just who I talk to more, but it's like the difference. Like, you can be angry, but you can't be aggressive.
Yeah.
Like, there's a big difference there.
Yeah.
The point you made about humor and using that as a tool, how often and how appropriate, and like, just like, when can we use it and when can we not?
Oh, I think it's the kind of humor that you use, right? Like, sarcasm never makes things better.
Yeah, that's like contempt, right? That's like,
yeah,
it's like Gottman. Your marriage is not doing well.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's not funny to anybody but you, right? Like, it's not good. I think there are ways that if you have a gentle or creative humor, it can, ease the moment. I remember at one time, I hope this sounds okay when I say it out loud. I haven't thought about it for a long time. I worked on an inpatient unit for adolescent boys. I was the daytime staff for 12 hours. No, I was there 8 hours a day for 12 adolescent boys who needed to be inpatient. I mean, they were really, very, very high need kids. And I remember one day, this was in Denver where I'm from, and it was a hot summer day, and we were taking them somewhere in a van, and they were all just complaining so much and like being so salty and so just kind of grumpy. And so I started like, and I hope it sounds like it cracked them up. So I think it was okay. And I don't know that I can capture that, but I started doing it too. I was like, like I was like the staff, but I was like joining. I was like, where are we going? Why are we doing this? Right? And they thought it was
sucks.
This sucks so bad. Why are we? And they thought it was so funny. And I was just like, it just like helped the moment, right? Like,
I love that. Yeah.
And so, but I think, it can go wrong very readily. So you have to be careful. But I don't know, that moment, they thought it was like the funniest thing in the world. And like, we were able to move on together,
I think joining with them is like a great one. Hopefully, as long as they know you, I think if they know that there's some care and love there, and then that's funny. I'll sometimes do that with Oliver, and just like, if he's complaining, I'll be like, boo, this looks like, but that he, most of the time, sometimes he doesn't like it, but
if it's like, let's play, right? If it has a quality of like, let's play together with this, right? I think that you can use it, and it's, it's just another creative way to try to shift the mood, shift the moment.
Look, something's bothering me lately. It came up. I just talked with someone else who was at the Competence Summit, Joe Gajunas. He did a show on PBS about essentially being a dad, and with a bunch of other dads, and it's a great show. Grown Up Dad, yeah. So it's awesome. But we talked about the manosphere. The research that shows boys, when they bully girls, it's likely the least popular boys in the class mistreating the most popular girls. Is that, I just have my note is this the manosphere?
Oh, I think there are related concepts. I mean, I think.
Am I going to get you in trouble?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I mean, I wish I had actually named that section of the book. It's really hard to be a 6th grade boy.
Okay.
Right. Like, I really think.
Well, wait a minute. 6th grade boy, that's fine. And Oliver is in 6th grade. And if he did that, I would take. What about when people do it when they're 40?
Well, okay. Then, I'm going to take a different tack on this. But
Thank you.
Fundamentally, what is underneath it, I will say for kids, and in some ways adults are above my pay grade, it's a sense of feeling small, right? The kid in class, the, low on the totem pole boy who's going after the high on the totem pole girl, like he feels small. And there's easy ways to go after girls. And it's usually sexualized and it's usually pretty effective and it's, all too tempting, I think, for some kids.
Mm-hmm.
When men are doing it, right, I think sometimes it's because they feel small, right? I think there are men who go after women because they feel small. I think there's other dynamics at work by the time you get to adulthood, right? I mean, I think people get drunk on power. I think that it's, it's a very ugly aspect of humanity that we're always looking for someone who's below us. And if they're not, we're going to get them there. I think that happens. Not my favorite, to say the least, in the most Midwestern way possible.
This is the most Midwestern and polite, but also, the medium is the message in the way you're describing this, because it's so helpful and so loving and understanding. I tried to get you to be mean and you wouldn't do it. And it's all you've done is helped me decide how I can be more like you in this situation.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah.
That is lovely.
Thank you. And there's a reason that I think last time I checked, the Ask Lisa podcast has nearly 300 episodes, and it's because one episode's not enough. So I have loved having you on the show. I think anytime you want to come back, I know hopefully we'll get a chance to connect in the fall, and cannot wait to have you come speak at the Wellness Together 10th annual conference. And so I do encourage people, especially parents who are looking for direct, kind, humble, smart answers to how to deal with things in their home and how to lovingly parent. Please check out the Ask Lisa podcast. All three of Lisa's most recent books are incredible. And now you've given me another challenge, because I have an archive subscription to the New York Times. I haven't read those. So, and I don't know if you can put those out in a book, but I would love to read that.
I wish I could. But if you just put my name in at the Times, you'll get all my pieces.
And is there anywhere else or anything else you'd like to make sure people know as we close out?
I appreciate that. So my website is a very good one-stop shop, just drlisadamour.com. I have an AI-powered librarian who answers questions based only on my work.
Is that Rosie?
Rosalie. Yep.
Rosalie.
My daughter was 13 when she named her.
Okay.
And she's like, name her Rosalie. I was like, okay. So I took all my book manuscripts. I wrote nearly 100 pieces for the Times. I took all of the transcripts from my podcast. I write a weekly newsletter that's free that people can sign up for on my website.
Awesome.
All of that is Rosalie's brain. And so you can ask her any question about tweens or teens, and she will not pretend to be a therapist. She will say, here's what Lisa says. And then she'll direct you to, here's the Times piece on it. Here's the podcast on it. Like, if you want to go deeper. So she is free. I keep her free. I want people to use her. So at 2 a.m., you find vapes in your kid's room. Rosalie's got your back.
What an incredible way to embrace the future, continue to help, and actually scale up your brain and your whole approach to being loving and also very helpful. So
thank you.
Dr. Lisa
That's
Damour,
really kind.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Hope to do it again sometime soon. And until next time, we'll see you later.
Welcome. Hey, whoa. Season 3, Marlon Helps, coming back. Still crazy energy. I don't know why I can't start this segment like a normal person. Marlon, are you excited to be back?
What do you think? What do you think, Andrea?
You want the real answer?
It really just depends how tired I am, what I've done that day. It's just like everyone else. Hey, yeah. I'm just like everyone else.
Love this episode. Love talking to Dr. Damour, obviously. You know what really stuck out to me this episode was when she said, we were talking about coping strategies, and she said, a healthy coping strategy is anything that brings relief and does no harm. Mm-hmm. And so I was really thinking about what are my coping strategies. I joked in the episode that it's crying on the floor with my dog. Not a joke. Very true.
Seems like a good one. I don't think that's hurting anyone.
No. And she said it's incredibly adaptive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I wanted to talk coping strategies. The help I would like is for you to share some coping strategies that maybe our listeners at home can try, that maybe go beyond the scream into a pillow, take a walk.
What's useful and what's helpful. So I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach to Dr. Damour's answer. I think we do a lot of things that help us cope that are sort of in a gray area. And I think it matters, how gray, how harmful are they?
So meaning that like sometimes it's okay if your coping strategies are a little harmful? Like just a little as a treat?
I think it's all relative. I don't know, sometimes
What's
I'll
an
think,
example?
well, I think a frozen yogurt's better than a pack of cigarettes. Mm-hmm. I don't think sugar is really that good for you. I think we're pretty clear on that at this point. So, yeah, I think it's hard because some things make us feel better, and it really matters how much you do of those things, how much you're willing to balance that out with things that are really healthy. Some people cope by being, very rigid about being healthy, and I'm not sure that's helpful always either.
Right. Yeah. I feel like very early on, the first, THP episode with Dr. Anna Lemke, I feel like you guys talked about that a lot, actually.
Yeah, I definitely shared my coping skill, and the one I open up to at night when everyone else is asleep is chocolate peanut butter Haagen-Dazs. And, that's changed a little bit. I've been doing a little better there, but...
What's the trade? Did you replace it with something that feels still helpful but less...
The thing that has helped me with only using, basic coping skills like ice cream is being more honest and aware about how I'm actually feeling.
Great.
And the more I try to ignore it, the less room I make for those really hard things, the more room they take up in my life. And the more room I make for them, and the more I'm willing to call a friend instead of scroll endlessly, the more I realize overall my life gets better. And guess what? I eat a little bit less ice cream. But I think it's all relative, and we need to allow ourselves to be human in a very tough world. And sometimes that includes being a little bit indulgent. But again, once we start to live for those substances, or we start to prefer them over other people on a regular basis, we start to cut ourselves off from the things that actually make us happy, joyful, and content. And this is also what I say at the beginning of every episode. Those things aren't things at all. They're people. They're our relationships. They're anyone who makes us feel seen, valued, loved, and that we can do the same thing for, because it's really hard. One thing I really like that Lisa said is it's really hard to be depressed when you feel really useful. And she said that in her book. I'm not sure if she said it in the episode, but that was probably one of my favorite lines. She does a great job of boiling down, all kinds of, stacks of journal articles and research down to these sayings that I think we can take with us and actually make our lives better. They certainly help me.
Yeah. Isn't that something about like depression and volunteer work?
Yeah, I think that is part of the research that she's referring to. Getting outside yourself. Depression, if you think about depression like pain, what do you think about when you stub your toe? Thinking about how people are doing in another country?
Just think about that toe.
You're thinking about what
Poor me.
cuss word is going to help a little bit with this, which actually is a different study, and it does.
Yeah. I love that. That's one of my favorite things to have learned.
Yeah, cussing can be a little bit helpful sometimes. Really get your feelings out and deal with them. But sometimes when I'm trying to explain how depression and anxiety, how we treat people without realizing it, the two situations that I'll use is stubbing my toe for depression because it hurts. It's just like kind of solitary. You almost feel like it's your fault, even though it wasn't. And you don't treat other people very nicely within the 5 or 10 seconds after you stub your toe. You're very focused, or at least I am very focused on how I'm feeling, my own pain. But when I can get outside myself and actually do something that feels helpful, useful for other people, it's hard. It's hard to do because another symptom of depression is loss of motivation. So to do anything when you're in pain and to move forward and stop yourself from going down that that kind of vicious spiral that brings us down into more and more sadness and solitary feelings of loneliness, I think it's hard to get out of that. But if you can make yourself get out and do something for someone else, it can really change the way you think. And for anxiety, I always use the example of, you ever just picture you're late for a job interview, something that your brain will not let you forget is very, very important, and you lost your keys. And if someone tries to ask you a question and you're anxious and you're just trying to find those keys, you're just trying to feel a little bit better and you cannot stop thinking about it, are you cool to be around? You're like a good hang?
Right. No.
Probably not. You're probably either silently suffering and totally pissed or totally scared, which is a different kind of pain. So I think just giving ourselves a break and knowing that it's hard to be cool and it's hard to be a good friend when you're in a lot of pain, but it actually does help us to get outside of ourselves. One of the most powerful antidotes to anxiety that we can sort of do ourselves if we're able to is make a gratitude list. It's hard to be anxious.
Is this true?
Yeah, of course it's true. If you can get yourself to the place where, how scared are you that even like the worst of the worst things that you can think about happening, if you're also thinking about the best things in your life right now? What could be better?
Right.
It's hard because your brain, your biology, depending on what's making you anxious, it could be anything. And it's hard to get out of that. Mm-hmm. But if you can, one of the things that kind of anchor us, that can help us feel better pretty quickly, well, two things. Regulating your breathing, because that tells your sympathetic nervous system, hey, everything's okay. So that kind of handles it for your body. And then just going on a list, going down a list of things that you are lucky to have in your life. And a lot of times those are people as well.
Why? Because I'm going to guess I'm not the only one who feels this way, where it's like, I know it's true. I get it. I objectively understand that, breathing, water, getting outside, making a phone call.
For those on the West Coast, she said water.
Water.
All the things that are on the list that you see on
Yeah. And it's
BuzzFeed.
not even all the things, because it's only 4 things.
The truth is you're a complex human being with all kinds of needs, and some of them are going unmet. So it's just like anything else. Remember we talked to the two authors that wrote The Social Biome?
Yeah.
And they talked about,
Paul and Marola.
Yeah, those guys. I love those guys. Mm-hmm. And, they kind of explain the whole thing's like a biome. It's like you need those social calories. It's like, that's like saying hey, you want to be healthy forever? Just eat a ton of broccoli and nothing else. That's, eating broccoli is going to help. Going outside is going to help. Calling a friend, and if your friend's in a bad mood, that's not probably going to help. So, and if it's horrible and cold outside, that's probably, maybe it'll help, but maybe it won't. But it's not just these little things like get a little more sleep or whatever. It's like they all add up.
Right.
And it's the best way I can describe it and how I used to talk about it in private practice is with every decision, depression, anxiety, those things, they make you feel bad about yourself. And when we feel bad about ourselves, we don't treat ourselves very well. So every little decision that we make, there's probably a better one when we're in that we're in that mindset. So sometimes it's helpful, it clouds your thinking. If you're feeling depressed, feeling anxious, it's hard to think clearly. And something that helped me was just to always, if I'm making a decision, what would I tell someone I really love to do in this situation? Would I say, work 5 more hours and forget about all of the existential dread that you have? I'm asking for a friend again. But, or would I say, take a nap? Or would I say, all the things, eat more ice cream, or open up to a human being that probably has been waiting for you to do that for a long time. We have to make those decisions, but sometimes we have to kind of trick ourselves into being loving towards ourselves. We tend to think that we're worse than we are secretly, and then we try to cover it up, and then we get anxious about that. And, it's hard being human.
Well, that was, as usual, genuinely helpful for me, Marlon. Thank you. And I hope it was helpful for our listeners. And if our listeners want some of that good help with any, questions they've got in their own lives, you know what they can do?
What?
They can head on over to thishelpspodcast.com/ask and submit their own question. And we'll be back this time next week.
See you then.
See you then.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope it helped. Stay connected with us at This Helps Podcast or at thishelpspodcast.com. The best way to support the show is by leaving a rating and review wherever you get your podcasts. And if you say something nice about me, I will use it to bolster my self-esteem from this point on the rest of my life. It really does make a difference for me, my self-worth, and for people to find the show.